Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a very special Perfumers portfolio video. It's a ranked Perfumers portfolio video. So we are going to actually do a top 17 Jean-Claude Ellena creations. And this is a video that has been regularly requested by some of you, and I've sort of been putting it off because I have still been buying some Jean-Claude Ellena stuff, still getting to know his work. You've heard me talk about Jean-Claude Ellena previously on my channel, but for the longest time, I honestly thought I wasn't a fan of that style of his, that watercolor, they say pastel style that's very airy and light, and almost wears, sometimes it almost feels like his fragrances sort of come and go. You know, you smell them and then you don't smell them and then you smell them again and they come back. And that sort of style, which I know my brother Eugene absolutely loves, never really appealed to me as much, but slowly, almost like one step at a time, you know, the more I've gotten into this hobby, the more I've come to really love and appreciate Jean-Claude Ellena's work. And he has a new fragrance coming out for Frederic Malle called Heaven Can Wait. I absolutely love the name, and I really am crossing my fingers and hoping it's going to be Frederic Malle returning to form, and that this is not sort of a continuation of the trend of Frederic Malle as a house, which I really feel like, while maybe Uncut Gem was not as bad of a release as some of the FragCom members will make it seem, I really do feel like, you know, the house in general has been in a little bit of a steady decline. I'm not ready to say terminal decline, but I will say a steady decline. So, cannot wait for Heaven Can Wait to come out and get to sniff that. I probably won't buy it. I'll probably just wait until a sample or something falls in my lap. But yes, I'm excited about that. And I wanted to do this video. And as you guys know, with these Perfumer portfolio videos, these rankings are just my opinion at this time when I'm creating the video. It is 6:15 on Friday, June the 9th. And so I'm doing this June the 9th. Ask me June the 10th, and it could be completely different. So keep that in mind, okay? That's number one. Number two, I'm not saying that the number 1 ranked fragrance is better than the number 7 ranked fragrance or anything like that. This is just my personal opinion. And this is a fun way to kind of talk about a lot of perfume in one interesting setting. You know, a lot of people talk about maybe brands or stuff like that, but very few people, even today, focus on the perfumer. And so I think these Perfumer portfolio videos are very important. So let me read you a blurb from Parfumo on the great Jean-Claude Ellena. And to me now, he is the great Jean-Claude Ellena. Let me read you a blurb and then I'll talk a little bit about his background and we'll get into these fragrances. So it says, Jean-Claude Ellena has an awe-inspiring answer ready when asked about the secret of his success. Friendly resistance. He sees himself as a polite naysayer. I completely can get along with somebody like that. I like someone who goes against the grain, who shakes things up, who doesn't like to be put into a box and confined. And, you know, he was somebody who for the longest time worked out in the woods. Literally, it would be him and his assistant out in the woods. They would eat there. They would live there. He would create his briefs there, and then he would fly to the Hermes headquarters and present them, and then he'd go back out to the woods. He was literally like a hermit perfumer. And I can really get down with somebody who just says, hey, I'll do what you want me to do, but I'm going to do it my way. You know, as a little bit of a maverick. I really enjoy that. He says he sees himself as a polite naysayer, which is also the recipe for his unbroken success story as a nose. The only classic thing about him is his preference for timeless fragrances. Born in Grasse as the son of a perfumer, his path into the world of fine fragrances was predetermined. However, his school performance was so poor that he was denied higher education and therefore never completed formal education at one of the largest cadre forges. However, he was fascinated by the perfumes enough to join Givaudan in Switzerland in 1968, where he learned the basics of perfume composition from scratch. There, he was soon able to draw attention to his talent and score numerous point landings for the traditional house. In 1992, the German company Harman and Reimer, now known as Symrise, approached him. In 2004, he moved to Hermes, where he served as a chief perfumer until 2015. Since then, he has put his good nose to work as a sought-after freelancer on notable projects. Jean-Claude Ellena no longer has to prove anything to anyone. He can look back on over 50 years of creations that he's composed for Hermes alone. He's created, in addition, he created for Bulgari, Frederic Malle, Latizan, Cleef and Arpels, Balenciaga, Cartier, Yves Saint Laurent, Christian Lacroix, Giorgio Armani, many others. The modest superstar lives and works near Grasse. He describes himself as a writer of fragrances, as each perfume begins with handwritten notes and his thoughts. The talent, I like that too. The talent has led him to publish 2 highly acclaimed books along the way. In 2012, his diary, The Dream Scent, From the Life of a Perfumer, and Parfum, A Guide to the World of Fragrance. In total, he received the Fifi Award of the Fragrance Foundation 6 times. In 2015, the German Perfume Award Duftstars followed his life's work. Success cannot be planned, says Jean-Claude Ellena in one of his rare interviews. Every new fragrance is like an adventurous journey that has to be pursued. And the best way to do that is by following your nose. Great stuff, okay? One thing I should mention real quick before we really get into this any deeper is that I am not claiming to be a Jean-Claude Ellena expert or specialist by any stretch of the imagination. There are so many pieces of work that I've never smelled. Just to give you some color. I've never smelled Bigarade Concentré or Cologne Concentré. I've never smelled some of the Hermes like Pamplemousse Rose, Eau de Orange Vert, Eau de Gentian Blanche. I've never smelled any of the Merveille line, any of them, none of them. The Elixir, the Eau Claire, the any of those lines, I've never smelled it. I have not smelled most of the Hermescence. So I haven't smelled Bryn de Réglisse, I haven't smelled Épice Marine, I haven't smelled Iris Ukior, I haven't smelled Osmanthus Yunnan, I haven't smelled Muguet Porcelain, I haven't smelled Papique Brazil, I haven't smelled Pourvois Samarkand, I've never smelled Santal Masoya, never smelled Rosy Kibana, never smelled Vetiver Tonka. You get where I'm going with this, okay? There's a lot of stuff that he has done. I've never smelled Eau Très Fraîche. I've never smelled the Hermes Eau Très Fraîche front flanker. I've never smelled so much of his work. I have not smelled, okay? And so whenever I'm going through this list, keep that in mind. Obviously, there are some people that are going to go, what? But what about this and that? And this is just my collection. So this is a perfumer's portfolio, obviously ranked on my collection, not his entire portfolio, but in my collection. So keep that in mind. So I still have a lot of his work to smell. Plus, I'm actually really looking forward to the new Frederic Malle because of the fact that I think there's going to be a little bit of a bounce back is my guess. So this is actually going to be a top 18. A top 18. I think I might have said 17. It's a top 18. So, let's get into this, I guess. The other big one from him I've never smelled is Eau de Campagne. Never smelled it. So, so let's get into this. First, I just want to tell you guys my scent of the day. Today I wore Ariza El Legrand Chypre Mousse. I have an early impression video on the channel. I would urge you to check that out. If you're a Chypre lover, if you're a lover of complex perfumery, Chypre Mousse is fantastic. Probably full bottle worthy, although I don't think I'll get a bottle, but I do think that it is full bottle worthy from my opinion. Okay, so let's get into this. So the first one is actually, believe it or not, going to start out with an asterisk, unfortunately. Well, before we even get into the first one, let me just say one honorary mention that Jean-Claude Ellena should get credit for is French Lover. Because even though Pierre Bourdon's name is on the bottle, now with the availability of hindsight, it came out that basically Jean-Claude Ellena created that fragrance for Frederic Malle. They were getting ready to release it, but he ended up taking the exclusive Hermes Parfumer job, so he couldn't put his name on the bottle. It would have been a breach of contract. So Frederic Malle looked around and said, hey, I need a big name star to sort of put his or her name on the bottle. Pierre Bourdon was getting ready to retire soon, so he said, I'll kind of add a couple things at the end and sign my name on it and put the name on the bottle. But for all intents and purposes, rumor is Jean-Claude Ellena did most of the work of French Lover, or Bois de Rage if you're in the United States. So just an interesting little tidbit. It's not in the video because Pierre Bourdon's name is on it, but Jean-Claude Ellena definitely deserves a hat tip for that DNA, if you will. Okay. So, now let's get started. No more waffling. Number 18 on the list. but there is an asterisk. Even though no more waffling, there is an asterisk with this one because number 8 is Rumba. And if you look at my bottle, this is actually Ted Lapidus's Roomba. But the original fragrance that Jean-Claude Ellena made was not Ted Lapidus Roomba. He made Balenciaga Roomba, which is discontinued. I would love a vintage bottle of Balenciaga Roomba. See, I bought this because everyone said that it's the same scent. You don't have to worry about a vintage. This is the same. And foolishly, I believe I trusted some folks, and I don't think it's the same. I think it's a completely different scent. Well, not a completely different scent, but I think that it definitely has been reformulations over the years. This one was created in 2009, and so my guess is if I smelled the vintage, I bet you I would really like it. This one, you know, it's a style that I honestly do like. It has this plum opening in the beginning, and it has this sort of rosy jasmine, big 80s floral heart, late 80s floral heart. Think of things like Aquitos with that huge floral, slightly animalic as well, or think of just the way they used to do those late 80s fragrances. And there is orange blossom, patchouli, amber, what they call animalic notes, and sandalwood. Okay, so my guess is that the reformulation on this just wasn't as good as it should have been. So that's my guess. That's the reason it's at number 18. I think the original Balenciaga Roomba would be a love for me, is my guess. Because I've gone through that a couple times. I did it just recently, for example, with Alfred Dunhill's For Men. The new bottle of this is not as good. This is officially discontinued, but I hunted down an old bottle, an 80s bottle, and the difference is striking. I mean, unbelievably striking. This is a fantastic fragrance in vintage form. And so my guess is that I'm going to run across something very similar with Roomba. Still like it, but the reason it's at 18 is I really don't think, just guessing, not smelling the original, but guessing they did not do a good job on the reformulation of Roomba. So number 18 is Roomba. Number 17 is Dia Woman. And this is one I don't have a full bottle of, but I do have a review, or at least my thoughts, if you will, on Dia Woman. So if you go to my live streams, there's a couple Amouage videos where I focused on smelling these women's fragrances from Amouage I've never smelled before. And Dia Man is one of my favorite Amouages. I think it's almost a masterpiece. Bertrand Duchaufour did that, and they used the note of peony in Dia Man. And peony is a very tough flower to work with because it's not mute, but it's almost so soft you have to be right up on it to smell it. If you're even this far away, you won't smell it. But when you do smell it, it's such a brilliant flower. And the reason that this is here, this is basically like a floral, powdery type scent. There's a lot of orris, I remember that. There's some other nice little pieces in here. There's a little touch of fig and some sage and a beautiful sort of sandalwood, white musky sandalwood dry down. But it's very, very soft. This is a very quiet scent. And I don't know how old this sample is. I don't think it's a vintage. I think it was a newer bottle. The woman who sent this to me very kindly sent me like all of her women's Amouages to smell, and I did some live streams. You can kind of hear my thoughts there. I liked it, but it's very quiet. You know, if you're someone that really enjoys Jean-Claude Ellena's style, and you like the fact that he creates these very light, you know, type of scents. Now, this is not in his watercolor, you know, because this is an Amouage. So this is not his usual sort of watercolor scent DNA that he came up with and really started to popularize with Hermes. This is a little bit heavier because it's got violet leaf and peach blossom and rose and, you know, these heliotrope and these heavier type notes, these woods and vanilla and frankincense in the base, but it just feels so light. And it could be because I was testing it against a lot of other Amouage women's scents that it was just like drowned out by the heaviness of some of the other scents. So maybe I'll circle back to this. If I find any huge differences, maybe I'll do a full video on just Dia Woman. But for me, right now, that has to be at number 17. Number 16 is another little bit of a controversial one. I'm including it in the video because it's in Fragrantica listed as Jean-Claude Ellena, but Parfumo does not list a perfumer. So I honestly don't know who made this, but this is a 1990 release by the House of Rochas, and this is called Globe. And this is actually a fantastic fragrance. It has that late 80s, early 90s DNA that I absolutely love. There's a beautiful patchouli in here, which was very popular at the time. There's green fern, there's old school carnation, there's, this fragrance sort of sits where 1 foot in the 80s, 1 foot in the 90s, if you will. There's a little bit of freshness, but there's also this labdanum heaviness and sandalwood. And a little bit of cumin in the top. And the reason that I decided to end up including this in the video is because of that cumin. You know, if you understand some of his work with Declaration, which is coming up very soon, you'll sort of get an idea. This is almost like him playing with a little bit of the cumin that was in Declaration. And it actually really is a fantastic masculine fragrance. No one talks about. I got 2 of these from FragranceBuy.ca or something once for like $10, and they're 15 mils. Yeah, so it was like 30 mils for 10. Like they were just giving them away, $5 each. Just take them. No one wants them, and it's a great fragrance. So I'll do a video on Rochas Globe one day. But yes, according to Fragrantica, which they're not always right, but this is a Jean-Claude Ellena creation. So that comes in at number 16. Number 15 is the only fragrance from this line that I have in my collection, and it's only a little, what is this? This is a Discovery atomizer of some sort, but I don't know how big these are. I think they might be 15 mil. How big are you? How large are you? Speak to me, bottle, speak. 15 mils, it is. Okay, 15 mils. So this is Un Jardin sur la Toit. Un Jardin sur la Toit. And Un Jardin sur la Toit is one of his, this line, what's the name of this line called? I forget what it's called, but it's basically like the Garden series, the Hermes Garden series, because if you ever take a look at the Hermes actual headquarters, there is literally a garden. Garden on the roof, I think is what the name translates to of the series, or rooftop garden. And, you know, Jean-Claude Ellena would go up there and sometimes try to get inspiration from the garden that Hermes had on the roof, you know. So in Paris, you just imagine this big skyscraper building, and on top is a beautiful garden. And so this is a very fresh green scent that uses the note of apple and apple wood and pear tree wood beautifully. So it's apple and pear, and you know, pear and apple are notes that I think are really hard to do right in a perfume of this, let's say, elegance, you know, because this is a very fresh and green and you know, slightly woody because of the woods, but it feels so unique. You know, it's great. You know, somebody on Eugene's stream yesterday or 2 days ago when Rich Mitch hopped on, someone was asking for summer bangers, like, you know, a fragrance where you can just sort of spray away in the summer and you really enjoy wearing, but it's really made for the summer and you probably wouldn't wear it any other time of year. This is that for me. This is exactly that type of fragrance. And only because of the size of my collection, so large, did I opt for a 15 mil. You know, I don't need a full bottle of this, but it is good to know that you can just sort of spray away. But Un Jardin sur la Toit, I'm still hunting Un Jardin sur la Nil. That's one that I would also like. Actually, I'd like a Discovery atomizer of all of these, because I would love to test the Gardens line and also the other Hermesences that I've never smelled. But yes, oh yeah, so if you actually look at the front here, you'll see this is a representation of the Hermes building, and there's the little garden on the roof. So there you have it, a little breakdown, a little FYI for those of you who did not know that. But for summer, man, Un Jardin sur le Toit is absolutely glorious. Okay, so that was number 15. Number 14 is the only Latizan Parfumeur on this list. And I'll tell you what, this is a very underrated amber fragrance. Everyone overlooks this one for whatever reason. I think a lot of people just overlook L'Artisan Parfumeur nowadays because they're not as popular as they once were. I think once Pluie bought them, a lot of sort of the wind out of their sail, it was taken out of their sails, if you will. But these older L'Artisan Parfumeur fragrances are fantastic to me. And this one came out in 2001. So at number 14, we have L'Artisan Parfumeur L'Eau d'Ambre Extrême. So this is a fantastic amber. To me, I think this is one of the more underrated ambers because it does exactly what you would expect a good amber fragrance to do, but it's very resinous. There's this benzoin, the warmth of benzoin. Imagine taking like a Bic lighter and lighting the actual benzoin resin and just letting it melt. That's what it feels like to me. But it has this beautiful Turkish rose. So slightly spicy rose, but with the pepper and the cardamom and the nutmeg and the mace, those 4 spices sit on top of the amber, and it just has a huge amount of depth. You know how sometimes some amber fragrances just fall flat? Like, it does what you expect. It's an amber, but it just doesn't really, feel alive. This one, to me, does. I don't know what the new bottles that are marketed by Puig are like, but these older bottles before they did the switch over, I can definitely vouch for these. This is really good stuff. A great amber. Fantastic. And I know Rich Mitch thought maybe the original L'Eau d'Ambre, which came out in the late 70s, I think, would be a good summer fragrance. And so, or a good amber for the summer. I don't know if he ended up saying that he decided to go that route or not, but I can tell you that this is an amber that has enough legs where you could easily wear this in the cooler weather. Just a beautiful amber that really gets overlooked amongst, there's a sea of ambers out there nowadays. But if you like stuff like, Histoire de Parfum Ambre 114 or Ambre, there's Maitre Parfumé Gantier Ambre Perso, which I have a decant of. I'll do a video on that one day. If you like Ambre Fetiche by Goutal, if you like those kind of ambers, even MFKs, there's an MFK amber everyone goes crazy about nowadays, which is going to bother me if I don't look it up right now because I can't think of it. And probably the people at home are like screaming at the, they are screaming at the screen right now. I keep wanting to say Ciel de Gum, but it's Grand Soir. It's Grand Soir. If you like stuff like that, you have to check out L'Eau d'Ambre Extreme. Just a beautiful amber. And, one thing with Jean-Claude Ellena that you learn is his fragrances, at first, sometimes you'll spray them and you'll think they're simple. So you'll spray this on, you'll be like, oh, this is just an amber, But then you come back to it and you spray it again and you pick up some of the spices. Come back to it again and you pick up sometimes the rose has this green element to it, or you come back to it and you pick up that almost bubbly benzoin. It's just, his fragrances have details, which, one thing I should mention before, I forgot to mention it at the very beginning when we were talking about Jean-Claude Ellena, but this is as good a spot as any since we were talking about his ability to impart detail into a fragrance. And he talked about sort of the journey of how you get there. Is he was a student. His mentor was Edmund Rudnitska, the late great Edmund Rudnitska, who basically had 2 main pupils. Okay, one was the great Pierre Bourdon, and the second actually was Jean-Claude Ellena. But when I was reading that little blurb, it doesn't talk about that when you're just doing the about me, because it says that he never completed formal education and they just kind of left it at that. But because of that, him and Edmund Rudnitska you know, he wasn't at the house of Edmund Runitska every day like Pierre Bourdon, so they had maybe a little bit of like this longer term relationship. And so he had to really soak in and take to heart everything Edmund Runitska say, whereas Pierre Bourdon was there. I mean, he was with him in his house, getting the training. And since I think maybe his school performance was so poor, Edmund Runitska sort of trained him on the side, if you will, but he still trained him. And Jean-Claude Ellena took every little bit of detail from the master that he could. The third person Edmund Runitska trained was his son, Michel Runitska. So just a very interesting little story when we start talking about the ability, using some of the tricks of the trade. And the other thing about Jean-Claude Ellena that you will find fascinating is many perfumers have to memorize 3,000 to 4,000 ingredients. 3,000 to 4,000. Just imagine having to know what patchouli is, but also what the you know, fake replacement that your oil company is using for patchouli, or you know how it goes. These sort of all these little captive molecules that they want you to use if you're working for this oil company or this brand or whatever it is. And he never did that. What he did is he memorized 200 ingredients. Jean-Claude Ellena memorized about 200 to 300 ingredients and materials, and just really tried to, instead of try to know a little bit about everything, he tried to be an expert about this little area. And so sometimes people smell his fragrances and they go, oh, that's not complex enough, or that's boring. But if you let it develop and give it time, you will see that there is complexity. It sort of takes its own path. It goes its own, it comes out in its own time, but you have to give it the time for it to really unfurl itself and reveal itself to you. So that's one thing about Jean-Claude Ellena for the newbies, I'll say, because once upon a time I was someone that went, I don't like Jean-Claude Ellena's work. It's not for me. It's too this, it's too that. The more I wore it, the more my mind started to be open to his work and his style, the more I started to appreciate it. So, just a little sidebar there, but Latizan's L'Eau d'Ambre Extrême is what made me think about that at number 14. Number 13. Number 13 is a fragrance that is rightly disrespected as far as I'm concerned. This fragrance is the fragrance community on YouTube acts like this fragrance doesn't even exist. To me, this is how they treat this fragrance. It's like out of sight, out of mind. And I don't understand why, because I think it is a brilliant composition. I love it. I think it deserves more love. Now, it is modern, okay? It's a woody, spicy fragrance, but it's still available to buy. I'd love to smell the EDT one day as well. But this is Voyage de Hermes, and probably one of the coolest bottles you'll ever see. It sits like this on your shelf, and when it's time to spray, you open it up. All right? And this, I really think that this could raise higher in my list the more I wear it, the more I get to know it. But this is juniper berries, sandalwood, and amber. Again, 3 notes. Seems simple. It's not. It's actually a very complex fragrance. And for a modern sandalwood scent, okay, we're talking modern sandalwood here. Not, you can't compare this to Samsara, vintage Egoist, anything like that. Modern sandalwood. I think this is one of the best examples of a well-done, modern, woody sandalwood that is done in this very modern type style, okay? Is it probably choked full of synthetics? Probably. But does it smell like a beautiful natural sandalwood? It really feels alive. It feels like you smell the sandalwood and you get one side of the tree. And then you smell it again an hour later and you get the other side of the tree. And, you know, each side has its own facet. This is a very whirlwind, you know, tornadic-like sandalwood note to my nose. And he created this sandalwood note, and he used it a couple times. He used it in a flanker of another Hermes, which we'll talk about as we get higher on the list. But Voyage de Hermes Parfum. I have the Parfum. I've never smelled the EDT, but I think the Parfum is... I think the Parfum is the more popular between the two. This came out a couple years after the EDT. But for his style, I really also need to smell the EDT because that may actually fit his style a little bit more. But I have no clue why this fragrance gets disrespected almost by, no one talks about it. And I think they really should. Voyage de Hermes Parfum from 2012. Okay, so that was number 13. Number 12. Number 12 is a newer addition to my collection within the last couple months. And this is another one which may even rise higher, but what might keep it in this area for me is the sweetness, because it is very sweet. But on a cold day, I can just imagine, I've worn this to bed, but I can just imagine on a cold day what this would be like. This is Ombre Narguile. And Ombre Narguile, so there was a base notes blurb that I read on Ombre Narguile, and of course I messed up and hit the back button here. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick. But basically it is amber and roasted sesame. So it's a very simple note breakdown according to Parfumo. There's a little bit more on base notes though. But what it smells like is it smells like this warm, spicy apple pie. Okay, it smells like sort of a warm, spicy apple pie. And let's see, Ombre Narguile. I probably can't spell Narguile. Narguile. Okay, let's see. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick. I'll read you the little blurb. So, God, base notes is so slow. I know people love base notes, but like when you click on something, sometimes it takes like 10 to 20 seconds for it to load, which nowadays is just like, you know, you're just like, come on, they need more servers or something. But it says, Amber, the Western expression of Eastern fragrances, has a warm, sensual, enveloping, almost carnal smell. I wanted to imbue this idea of amber with the memory of the East I love by recreating the ambiance of those lively places where tobacco, blended with the smells of fruit, honey, and spices, is smoked in nargiles or water pipes, and where swirls of smoke diffuse a sweet sensation of intoxication. So if you don't know what a nargile is, it's basically a way of saying a hookah. So what he's saying is this fruity, tobacco-y, honey, spicy, amber type creation. Now Parfumo says sesame seed, roasted sesame seed, and amber. But I think base notes is more proper in their definition of how it actually smells. It smells like amber, tobacco, fruits, honey, and spices. It smells like, you know what this smells like? This smells like every Tiziana Terenzi, Parfum de Marly, what they wish their fragrances could smell like. Those sort of, you know, cold weather, ambery, fruity, tobacco fragrances that they do. This is what they wish it could smell like to me. This is the classy version of that. Oh, it's so good. I've really come to like this, but I can't really wear it right now because it's super hot. I'm just waiting for the weather to cool off to give that a full wear. But this could also rise, but I don't know how much higher it can rise since that sweetness could sort of keep it pigeonholed here. But number 12 for me is Ombre Narguile. Number 11. You guys may be surprised by this one, but for me, this is where I'm putting it. I will tell you that whether it was this or the Parfum to go number 10 or 11, I went back and forth, back and forth. In the end, I ended up with number 11 being Terre de Hermes, probably his most popular fragrance of all time. This is a 500 ml bottle. If you can see the size of this thing, my hand can barely grip it. So when I wear Terre, I can just douse myself in it. And this is a 2000 and, where did the writing go? Here it is. It is a 2000, I think this is a 2014 bottle is what we ended up settling on when I looked this up. But the biggest bottle in my collection with an actual sprayer that works. Most of these 500 mils are just flacons and you have to decant it. This has a damn sprayer. You should see me trying to spray this thing. I have to like put it up against my body and, you know, but it's great. I absolutely love it. I'm glad to have an older batch of this. Somebody asked me if I think Terre has been reformulated, and I will say, yes, that's the rumor around the campfire, but I've never done a comparison myself, but I think it has. That's the reason I went for one of the older bottles, and very happy to have this in my collection. So I know as far as sales go, this is probably his most popular fragrance. Terre was an absolute smash hit for Hermes, but I did end up putting the Parfum one step higher. So number 11 was Terre de Hermes. Number 10 is the Pure Parfum. And so the interesting thing about this, though, just going back sort of to Terre versus the Parfum, is, you know, Terre de Hermes is a vetiver scent. That's what it is. It's an earthy, woody vetiver scent that is well known for its bitter orange. And actually, bitter orange is something that Jean-Claude Ellena himself is known for. So there's this peppery grapefruit bitter orange thing, and he used this Flintstone note in Terre. So there's this you know, metallic Flintstone-like note, which imagine like taking two rocks and smashing them together, trying to make a fire. That's that feeling that the Flintstone metallicness feels like in here. There's some geranium leaf, which I think he, you know, I'm thinking about maybe doing a video on ingredients that perfumers have mastered. So like for Francois Demachy, it would be myrrh, and you know, he sort of mastered a couple ingredients to me, but I could do like one on him, and let's say myrrh would be an easy one to do. For Jean-Claude Ellena, I think he really mastered sandalwood, like using it modern sandalwood, and geranium. I think he became like a master at geranium. It sounds crazy to be excited about a geranium note, but man, some of the geranium in his compositions are mind-blowing. And pink pepper, benzoin, and patchouli is also in Terre. And, you know, you've smelled Terre before. Trust me, it's extremely popular. If you're somebody like me and has put it off for so long because it is so popular, I would say give it a sniff, but while you can still find some of these older bottles at good prices. But I think for now, for today, the Parfum, which came out in 2009, Terre came out in 2006, sorry. And then in 2009, 3 years later, they released the Pure Parfum. And the Pure Parfum, it's funny, they never went to an EDP. So it didn't go EDT and then EDP and then Pure Parfum like you would expect. Jean-Claude Ellena jumped straight to the Pure Parfum, which is very interesting to me that he decided against just doing the normal breakdown of EDT, then EDP, then he just went straight to the Parfum. And there's a very interesting note in here called shiso. And so shiso is apparently a plant in the mint family. And so there's some different characteristics in a nutshell, but he did add this shiso note. And so there are some differences. It's not just exactly the same fragrance, I don't think. But this is, if you want Terre to be like heavier and thicker, and you don't like the fact that Terre sort of comes and goes, the EDT that is, which it does. I mean, that's a fragrance on me that, let's say, you put it on, and because of the, let's say, whatever the ambroxan or the note that gives Terre that throw, I think you become nose blind yourself to Terre very easily. People around you can definitely smell it, but it comes and goes. Like when I'm wearing it, if you want like the thicker, heavier version of Terre, go for the Pure Parfum. This is actually a 2009 bottle. I was able to get an original launch bottle, which I'm stoked at. So Mudasir hunted this down for me. But yes, fantastic stuff. So number 11 and number 10. Terre and Terre de Hermes Pure Parfum. Number 9 is going to be Equipage Geranium. My favorite version of Equipage. Although I would love to smell a newer bottle of Equipage one day. If a bottle falls in my lap, I think I would take it, because I have an older bottle and I just struggle with it still. I know I've said that a lot, but would love to try to find a newer bottle of Equipage one day just to see what they've done to it. But this flanker of Equipage is fantastic. One of the best work scents in my collection. It is spicy, slightly floral, woody. And, you know, the note listing, again, is very simple. But there are two of the notes that I said earlier that I think Jean-Claude Ellena mastered. Geranium and sandalwood. And they're done here to absolute perfection. And still, he stayed true to sort of the heart and soul of Equipage, you know, what it really was, but modernized it. And the clove note in here, the spicy clove, the nutmeg, and that sandalwood note, it's very hard to pin down this sandalwood. It really is a kaleidoscope of smells, but in that sandalwood realm, it's beautiful. I love this flanker Equipage Geranium. Definitely worth the sniff. Even if you don't really like the OG, this one's been modernized in such a way. It's very, very interesting stuff. So that is number 9. Number 8. Number 8 is a very interesting little dynamic duo. It is Van Cleef & Arpels first. This is the Eau de Toilette. And this is the Pure Parfum. And I can tell you that this is one of his first major creations, going all the way back to 1976 first. And, you know, it's... Fuck, man. So, I will tell you that I was able to hunt down vintage bottles of first. So this is actually an older bottle. You can tell by the 87 proof. And you can tell by the short ingredient list right here on the Pure Parfum. So these are older bottles. So I don't know what the new stuff is like. It's still available. It's marketed by Interparfums, who usually take good care of their fragrances. But this is flowery, powdery, honeyed, civet, animalic. It's an animalic chypre from the 70s. That's very complex. Lots of moving parts. I really... have not truly given it enough wears yet to give you any serious breakdown, but what I can tell you from what I know about it so far, and I've only had this for a couple months, ditto for the Ombre Narguile, but what I know about this is the best Van Cleef & Arpels fragrance for women. This and Gem, I would say, compete for that top spot. Gem may take the top spot for me. It depends on the day. But man, this is a fantastic chypre. It is just, to me, I absolutely love it. And this is my favorite version, the Pure Parfum. I'm going to decant. What I'm going to do is I'm going to decant this. I'm going to put this in a decanter and spray it all over me and review it one day. This is 15 mils of just pure amazingness. It's so decadent and rich. It has, you know, and if you told someone that Van Cleef, if you told someone that Jean-Claude Ellena made first, after now that they know sort of the style that he turned into, they would be like, no way. Because that is the exact opposite of that, you know, that pastel watercolor style that he developed. He was still in the process of becoming, you know, turning into the perfumer that he was going to be at that time. And he made a creation that is the exact opposite of what you would expect from him. And he nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. And there's a little bit of this, you know, classy, soapy aldehydes in the top with the fruits. So there's blackcurrant, peach, raspberry, all this, you know, fruity, honeyed, fruity decadence with that soapy contrast of aldehydes. It's just... And then the base of the chypre, the sandalwood, the civet. I like the EDT, but the Pure Parfum is like unbelievable. So that is first at. So first is number 8. Number 7 is the first Frederic Malle in this list, and it is actually a fragrance that Jean-Claude Ellena made as an homage to Après Landais, the great Guerlain scent, and it's called Lodi Veil. So Lodi Veil is, I actually have a review of Lodi Veil on the channel, and this particular bottle is an older bottle before Estee Lauder sort of took over Frederic Malle. This is heliotrope, iris, musk, bergamot, hawthorn, which he also really, I think, mastered that hawthorn note. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And even Angelica, I can say with certainty that what I said earlier about the 200 to 300 notes that he knows and works with versus the 3,000 to 4,000 most perfumers work with, I really do feel like you can smell it in his compositions, the way that he has this mastery of the notes. If you take the Angelica in this, and you take the Angelica in something like French Lover, which, you know, granted, Pierre Bourdon's name is on the bottle, but it's been said that Jean-Claude Ellena did most of that work. You can see the focus on the Angelica If you take the Hawthorn in this and the Hawthorn in Cuir d'Ange, which is much higher on the list, you can see this attention to the ingredient that he puts in there. But I love Lodi Veil. It basically is supposed to be almost like a conceptual redesign of Après Londe, because Après Londe was one of the first fragrances to use this modern anisic aldehyde, and this interplay of almond, which it's interesting because you take someone like Thierry Vasseur, who made almond one of the centerpieces of the L'Eau Médiale line, the modern man line, when he took over and he needed sort of a note to build around. He chose almond, and that's very Guerlain-esque, going all the way back to Après Londe, when it was almond, vanilla, like heliotrope, and orris, and he added his present day sort of transparency and airiness to that composition. Après Londe is supposed to be sort of right after the rain, the flowers come out, right, and everything is sort of fresh after that fresh rainfall. And this has a little bit of that, but it also has this beautiful, there's a little bit of heft to this, and there's this transparency. So it's like this contrast, this dichotomy. Over here, you've got sort of the heavier powdery notes, almost like the powder in this doesn't float. You drop the powder, and it's heavy enough that it sinks to the, which obviously it would sink. But some powders feel like light and airy, and this powder feels heavy, and yet the fragrance feels light and airy. It's a very strange dichotomy he's created. But it's fragrances like this that really made me respect him more and more, and his appreciation for the past. So that's Lodi Veil at number 7. Number 6 is Roca Bar, which he actually worked on at Hermes before he was the in-house perfumer. He worked on it with Gilles Romney and Bernard Bourgeois. And this is basically a spicy, woody scent for the 90s. And it's interesting because, you started to get a lot of these sort of benzoin-y, vanillic masculines starting to come out. And this adds a beautiful green cypress on top, and it really feels like you're in the outdoors. And so you get sort of the freshness of what it feels like to be in a forest and be outdoors. There's cypress, there's old school carnation in here, which I love. There's cedar, it's woody. But for me, I get a lot of the benzoin, a lot of the resins, the fir balsams. Really like Roca Bar. It's not my favorite Hermes, but really like it. I think it's a very solid release. And so one of these days I will do a full review on these type of fragrances, which I talk about but have not reviewed yet on the channel. But Roca Bar is very, very good. That's what the older bottle looks like. The newer ones look like the one I showed the Equipage Geranium in. Okay, next on the list is going to be number 5, and it is a decant. It is Angeliques Sous la Pluie. Now, number 5, the reason that this is number 5, and I actually have a review of this on the channel, and I still have a couple mils left thanks to my good friend Arnold. The reason that this is number 5 for me, and this honestly, this probably could have been higher. This could be number 1 if your image of a perfect Jean-Claude Ellena fragrance is that airy transparency watercolory thing I keep talking about. This is probably your number 1 fragrance because it does exactly that. Again, it focuses on the Angelica. Remember, like I said earlier, with Lodi Veil and the talk about French lover, and juniper, pink pepper, cedarwood, and white musk. And so it seems simple. If you are somebody that sprays and you go, nope, you won't like this. If you're someone who lives in the scent, and one thing that people kept saying is, oh, this is never lasts, it only lasts 30 minutes. I call bullshit on that, because even though this is light and transparent and airy when you wear it, I could smell it for 8 hours, 9 hours. I mean, it lasted forever on my skin. It just, it's not a big projector is the thing. It sits close to the skin, but it does exactly what you would expect this type of Jean-Claude Ellena creation to do, this fresh, spicy, sort of uplifting fragrance. So I would urge you to check out Angeliques Sous la Pluie. I think, well, first of all, it's the prettiest named fragrance I've ever heard. Just a beautiful name, Angeliques Sous la Pluie. How can you not smile when you say that? Or it reminds me of the skunk in those what are the cartoons, the Looney Tune cartoons, when the one skunk is trying to kiss the other skunk, you know. Anyways, but yes, Angeliques Sous la Pluie is an absolutely beautiful fragrance, and if you like that style, I would highly urge you to check it out. Okay, next on the list is going to be number 4. We're getting down to the end, and you know what? This had to be here because this fragrance to me showed his growth as a perfumer. It showed it also showed how much he truly loved and appreciated Edmund Rudnitska, because I think he made this very soon after his death. And it is a pure homage to the man. You know, for me, Edmund Rudnitska's favorite creation, in my opinion, his best creation is Eau de Hermes. That's what I think, from 1951. This is a pure homage, a thank you, a salute, 21-gun salute to the man who just passed away when he made this, and its Declaration, Cartier's Declaration, the OG. The OG, this is a modern bottle. You do not need a vintage of Declaration to enjoy it. It does exactly what it should do in the modern form. This is a 50 ml, but Declaration is bitter orange. Again, very interesting that he used the bitter orange again in Declaration, and then he used it again in Terre to such a big hit. Both of these were big hits. This was a little shocking that this was a hit to me. So apparently, the rumor is this creation from Cartier was created for men in love experiencing passion, is basically the blurb. So take that for whatever you can take that little thing for. But it's bitter orange, bergamot, birchwood, with juniper wood, artemisia, cardamom, and cedarwood, vetiver, and oak moss. And it really opens up to me with cumin. There's no cumin listed, but I get a big spicy cumin from the opening, and it reminds me a lot of Eau de Hermes. Imagine like a modernized Eau de Hermes for the 90s, right? That's pretty much Declaration. And personally, for me, I would just wear Eau de Hermes, because I think Eau de Hermes is my, I would put Eau de Hermes up here. No offense to Declaration, but Eau de Hermes is on a pedestal for me. I think it's one of the greatest fragrances ever created. And but Declaration is paying homage to that, and it, surprisingly enough, it turns into a hit. People actually love this. You would think this would languish in obscurity. No, people love this stuff. They're still buying it today. It's still a bestseller for Cartier. And so Declaration for me shows his respect and appreciation for what Edmund Rudnitska did for him. But it also shows his respect and appreciation for what Edmund Rudnitska did for the perfume world as a whole. And that shows sincere maturity and a deep appreciation of his mentor as well. And I bet you there's a part of Jean-Claude Ellena that is surprised this sold so well. And this, when it sold so well, opened the eyes at the people of Hermes, because they went, holy shit, we just allowed another perfumer to make an Eau de Hermes, type fragrance for our exact competitor, Cartier. And I think that's when the gears really started turning on, Hermes wanting to bring him in to be the in-house perfumer of Hermes. They just could not allow such a slight to happen. And so the rest is history, as they say. But try Cartier's Declaration. It may feel a little old school to you at first, but it's because I think it's sort of an homage to the great Eau de Hermes. Okay, 3 left. Next on the list is one, probably most people are going to be shocked it's this high, but I have to be honest with you guys. I love this stuff. Absolutely love it. It's one of the few fragrances in my collection that I wish I had more juice of. I only have 50 mils of this. I wish I had 100. It is Frederic Malle's rose, and queer. And I know the old adage when this came out was, where's the rose, where's the queer? There's nothing, there's not rose or queer in here. And this fragrance, one of the reasons I love this fragrance so much is because it shows the magician side of being a perfumer. It shows sort of the sleight of hand, right? It shows that because they literally created a fragrance named Rose and Queer, and there is no rose in here. And I don't think there's any queer. They say that there's leather in the base. I don't think there's very much leather in the base. What I get is one of my favorite geranium scents of all time. The geranium in this is a perfect representation of a geranium note, done to perfection. It's floral, it's green, it's slightly rosy, and it's spicy. And you know, I think that people who are, you know, if you smelled this and you were just like a casual observer, you would think it was rose, obviously, because it says the rose and queer on it, right? Why would there be no rose in a fragrance called Rose and Queer? And it smells like rose, so there must be rose in here. But, so the geranium note is a stroke of brilliance to me. And that alone, I think, makes this one of my favorite Jean-Claude Ellena creations. But then you add this brilliant black currant with that Sichuan pepper. And Sichuan pepper always adds this fieriness to a fragrance. So there's a slight fieriness to it with the bourbon geranium, and then the vetiver and the cedarwood. And if there is a little bit of leather, it's just a bit. I love leather. This is not my favorite type of leather, obviously. I'll show you what my favorite type of leather is coming up soon. And this just, for the summer, for me, it's so green and fresh, and it just fits his aesthetic, to me, perfectly. This is like, this takes everything together he is as a perfumer, you know, and it just puts it in one little package. You know, the name throws people off, and yet he still executes it brilliantly. Just everything about it, you know, the way that it wears like a Jean-Claude Ellena. I can smell this all day. This has amazing longevity for me. And again, it's not going to probably reach out and everyone in the room will smell you, but so what? I mean, I wear perfume for me anyways. So Rose and Queer is one of my sleeper Jean-Claude Ellena creations at number 3. Number 2. You guys know what number 2 and number 1 are? Number 2 is my only full bottle from the, well, my second, because I now have Ombre Narguile. For the longest time, this was my only full bottle from the Hermes line. It's Cuir d'Ange. Cuir d'Ange takes that cuminy sort of opening from Declaration and Eau de Hermes and sticks it on a brilliant leather, a very white hawthorn. Again, you get that hawthorn note again I mentioned in Lodi Veil. So he masters these ingredients. So you're back to the hawthorn note, which adds this very white leather. This almost feels like a supple, soft calf leather bag, okay? Imagine a very soft calf leather bag with that cuminy and spicy, slightly animalic opening. Love it. Love Cuir d'Ange. I think it's very close to his greatest creation. And just for me, you know, if it wasn't for how much I love Bel Ami, I'll just tell you right now, you could easily make the case that Cuir d'Ange is actually his best creation. But for me, as a Bel Ami fanboy through and through, it's one of my favorite fragrances of all time, one of my favorite leathers of all time. This is Bel Ami Vetiver. And you can see I've given this a good amount of wears in the last couple years. Bel Ami Vetiver came out in 2013. It's a decade old. Oh my God. Fudge. Oh. It's so good. It's basically leather and vetiver, okay? Now, Bel Ami obviously has, I would say, a lot more going on for it than just leather and vetiver. I think there's some other things in here, maybe a little bit of Bellamy, old school carnation, touch of iris. They even say a little bit of civet, although I don't get too much. If there is, it's just a hint, you know? But, man, this, my God. I mean, just imagine taking Bel Ami and just modernizing it You know, if you wear Bel Ami in the winter, you could wear this in the spring or fall, or, you know, something like that. It's that kind of feel. And I think, honestly, I think that this, in my opinion, not sales or anything like that, but just my opinion, I think this is the greatest flanker ever made. Ever, of all time. Ever, ever, ever. Period. In the name of flankers. All hail in the name of flankers. I think this is the greatest flanker. Just one man's opinion, right hand to God. But man, I love this. I love Bellamy Vetiver so much. And in fact, when people ask me, and they probably ask me about 5 to 10 times a month, should I just go buy the new Bel Ami? And every time, you know what I tell them? No. Don't go buy the new Bel Ami. Get this. Get this. This is what you get instead of the new Bel Ami. If you're going to try to find the original shaker bottle Bel Ami or the first reformulation, go get the original. That's my favorite version. But if you're going to go buy the new Bel Ami, which they've toned down, it's not as good, get this instead. Get Bel Ami Vetiver. This flanker is my favorite Jean-Claude Ellena. So, that is my countdown, my top 18 Jean-Claude Ellena countdown. So, thank you to everybody for watching everything you do. Tomorrow is going to be the big top 100 4,000 subscriber thank you. So, I hope you guys appreciate this video, and I can't wait to see you guys tomorrow. There might even be one more tonight, but definitely cannot wait to see you guys tomorrow with the full top 100 countdown. Cheers, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.